Imagine standing in 19th century Paris, where every serious painter is still obsessing over ancient myths, stiff portraits of rich people, and historical scenes where everyone looks like they just swallowed a lemon. Into this polite, powdered world comes Claude Monet, a guy who basically said, nah, I'd rather paint boats, haystacks, and light. Yeah, you heard that right. Light itself. While everyone else was worshipping tradition, Monet was chasing sunlight like it was TikTok clout, trying to trap it on canvas before it slipped away. And here's the kicker. He wasn't just painting what things looked like. He was painting how they felt. The shimmer, the blur, the vibe of a moment. Monet turned canvases into snapshots of reality long before cameras went mainstream. If Vincent van Gogh was the rock star who shredded color like guitar solos, Monet was the DJ remixing daylight itself. His mission? To prove that light wasn't just something that revealed the world, it was the world. Claude Monet wasn't born with a paintbrush in his hand, but he might as well have been. Growing up in Le Havre, a coastal town in France, little Claude wasn't sketching heroic knights or classical statues like the other serious art kids. Nope. He was that teen doodling caricatures of grumpy townsfolk and selling them to make pocket money. If TikTok commissions had existed, he'd have been doing $5 ugly portraits and stacking views. Now, here's where it gets spicy. Monet's dad wanted him to go into the boring family grocery business. Imagine being told, son, forget about the sunsets and paint tubes. Come stock beans with me. That's basically the vibe. But Claude, he was built different. He wanted to chase colors, not canned goods. When the military draft came around, his dad pulled some strings and basically said, drop the paintbrush, and I'll get you out of this mess. And Monet, absolute legend that he was, went, nah, I'd rather risk death than quit painting. Like, who does that? Claude did. Instead of a cushy escape, he went off to Algeria, where the sun was so intense it burned itself into his soul. Even later, Monet said that the North African light permanently rewired his eye. While other soldiers were dodging bullets, he was taking mental notes on how sunlight made shadows look purple. The point? Monet didn't just like painting. He was ready to die for it. That's not just dedication, that's main character energy. His father finally caves and says, okay, fine, I'll bankroll this whole art dream thing, but you have to study under a respectable, proper master. Classic boomer energy. Claude tries it, he really does. But the problem is Monet isn't built for respectable. He's not into painting mythological gods looking like ripped gym bros, or noblemen staring into the abyss of their own wealth. Nope. He wanted to paint what he saw, what he felt. The messy, vibrant, fleeting chaos of life. And just when things were already rocky with Dad, Monet made things messier. He fell in love with Camille Dancieux, a young woman who wasn't exactly on the approved list. They fell hard, and when she got pregnant, Claude basically detonated whatever fragile support system he had left. His father pulled the plug on financial aid, leaving Monet broke, stressed, and trying to sell canvases that the art world considered unfinished doodles. He and Camille lived hand to mouth, constantly in debt, sometimes literally pawning paintings for cash. And yet, through the broke boy struggles, Monet kept painting. Like a TikToker who refuses to quit even when they're at 12 views. He believed in the vision. Except his vision wasn't dances or pranks. It was light. It's 1874, Paris. Monet and his squad of misfit artists are basically the Avengers of broke painters. Renoir, Degas, Pissarro, Sisley. All of them tired of getting clowned by the official art world. So instead of begging for approval, they rent out a studio and throw their own exhibition. DIY art show, punk rock energy. Monet puts up a canvas called Impression, Sunrise. It's not some biblical epic. It's literally a misty port scene, painted like he had 5 minutes before brunch. Loose brushstrokes, blurred colors, no sharp lines, basically the anti-establishment flex. A critic walks in, looks at it, and goes, "This isn't art, it's just an impression." He meant it as an insult. But instead of crying, Monet and the gang turned it into branding. Impressionism. Boom. A movement was born. From that moment, Monet wasn't just a guy painting boats. He was the leader of an entire rebellion against dusty art rules. They weren't trying to paint reality like a camera. They were chasing vibes, moods, the fleeting light that only exists for a second. And the world? At first, they laughed. But slowly, the laughter turned into curiosity. Then admiration. Monet wasn't just painting. He was capturing time itself. He was bending paint into sunlight. Monet had one true love affair that lasted longer than any relationship, any friendship, even his bank account. Light. The guy was literally obsessed. If Van Gogh was painting with emotion, Monet was painting with photons. He'd stand in front of the same haystack, cathedral, or bridge at sunrise, noon, dusk, and paint them over and over, like he was training for an Olympic event called catching vibes with a brush. He wanted to show how the world changed, not because the subject moved, but because the light did. But his greatest flex? The water lilies. Monet moved to Giverny, planted his dream garden like a true cottagecore king, and basically built himself a living canvas. Japanese bridge? Check. Exotic flowers? Check. A pond full of water lilies? Double check. And then he painted that pond like it was a personal religion. Not once, not twice. Try 250 times. These weren't just paintings. They were portals. Huge, immersive canvases where the horizon disappears, where you're drowning in reflections of sky and ripples of color. They weren't about the lilies. They were about light, bouncing off life itself. The Water Lilies series wasn't just decoration. It was Monet showing the world. Look, reality isn't static. It's liquid. It shifts. It breathes. And I'm the guy crazy enough to chase it with paint. When people stand in front of those murals today, they don't just see flowers on water. They feel swallowed by Monet's obsession. It's like stepping into his brain and realizing he was coding light into brushstrokes decades before Instagram filters made it cool. Here's the ultimate plot twist. The man who spent his whole life chasing light started losing his sight. By his 70s, Monet was hit with cataracts. And suddenly, the world he worshipped went blurry and tinted, like a badly applied Instagram filter. Reds got weird. Blues vanished. Everything looked muddy. Imagine dedicating your life to painting sunlight, and then having the sun itself ghost you. But Monet, he didn't fold. He hacked it. He had his paint tubes labeled so he knew which colors he was grabbing. His assistants helped, but the genius was still his. Even when the world went foggy, he painted. And what came out were these otherworldly, fiery, dreamlike canvases, almost abstract, almost futuristic. It's wild. The guy who invented Impressionism basically stumbled into abstract expressionism decades before it was official. His late water lilies? They look like Rothko took mushrooms and met God in a pond. Monet's blindness didn't stop him. If anything, it pushed him deeper into pure color, pure feeling. And when he finally had surgery to correct one eye, he saw blues again and said, "Holy hell, I've been missing this." He literally got a second shot at light. Most people would have retired. Monet picked up the brush like a final boss, entering the last stage of the game. Even on the edge of darkness, Monet kept proving the same point. Light isn't just something you see, it's something you feel. When Monet finally put the brush down, he wasn't just leaving behind a pile of canvases. He had rewired art itself. Before him, painting was about realism, capturing things as they really looked. But Monet asked, what if the truth of a thing isn't in the details, but in the vibe? He cracked open the door for Impressionism, and through that door spilled everything from abstract art to modern design. Picasso, Rothko, Pollock, they all owe him rent. And let's not forget, his Impression Sunrise literally gave Impressionism its name. At first, critics roasted it. They said it looked unfinished, sloppy, like a bad sketch. But that sloppy sketch became the seed of a movement that changed the entire timeline of art history. What was once an insult, Impressionism, became a badge of honor. Monet turned shade into sunlight. Then there's the water lily. The series is massive, overwhelming, hypnotic. He wasn't painting plants. He was painting infinity. Light bending, time dissolving, a pond as a portal to the cosmic. Step into one of those panels and it's like he's teaching you how to see. Not the object, but the energy bouncing off it. And that's why he's remembered as the chaser of light, the man who followed the sun through wars, poverty, rejection, and even blindness. He caught fragments of it on canvas so that centuries later, strangers could stand in a museum and feel a piece of his obsession. Monet wasn't perfect. He was stubborn, messy, sometimes broke in. But his art was his rebellion against tradition, against expectation, against darkness itself. And the legacy he left behind is proof of one thing. Light is fleeting, but if you're brave enough to chase it, you can leave behind something eternal.